University Police's role and our, I guess the way that we're part of the community is that, we're primarily responsible for safety and security of the campus and the campus community, keeping our students safe. There's this funny thing in law enforcement, it's called jurisdiction, where our law enforcement authority is tied to jurisdiction, tied to geography. And prior to about almost 2 years ago, University Police's jurisdiction was limited to the 260 acres of the campus proper. Through the efforts of President Gibraltar and Mayor Flanagan, we were able to work out what's called a concurrent jurisdiction agreement because many of the problems, concerns, issues that affect safety are not occurring on campus. They're actually occurring out in the campus community where the student housing is concentrated. Mm-hmm. So with this concurrent jurisdiction, we've been able to, in my opinion, integrate ourselves even more with the campus community, with the full-time residents of the neighborhood, as well as with the students living in that area. We're interacting with our campus community, particularly with our students, in a proactive way. When they arrive in the fall, the officers are out knocking on their doors, talking to them, introducing ourselves. We call those knock and talks. We do get some complaints and concerns from the community at times about particular houses. When we get those, we will go proactively to the house, knock on the door, talk to the kids, let them know what the concerns are, let them know what our expectations are about their behavior in the community. We also, during the summer months particularly, try to interact with the full-time residents, let them know that we're there to support and assist not only them but the Frostburg City Police. So we've really tried to become, two points I'd like to make. One is that we've tried to become a bigger part of the larger community, but then also try to blur those lines between the full-time residents and the city proper and the university. I think it helps because what I saw when I came here almost 5 years ago was almost an us-them type of attitude on the part of, I did not see it so much from the students as I did from the Frostburg City community itself. From residents who would attribute any quality of life issue to student misbehavior, to even some of the administration and leadership in the city. When something would happen, even if a crime occurred, if it was a vandalism, whatever it was, it would be attributed to a student, even though they might not know who had done the deed. Right. So I think if we can blur those lines and become more of a one community as opposed to the university community and the city, I think that that will be very beneficial. Since we have the new jurisdiction agreement, and because we're able to be proactive in the city, and because Frostburg City Police, like many police departments, struggles with maintaining staffing, I think we've seen an improvement in the quality of life. And I can back that up anecdotally with phone calls and emails and conversations with members of Frostburg City community, non-students. I can look at our calls for service and sort of the type of calls that not only University Police but also Frostburg City Police are responding to. And what I see is an increase in proactive type calls where an officer will observe, let's say, a open container violation or something, underage drinking violation. But what I also see is a reduction in the level of violence. So I think we're on the right track with concurrent jurisdiction, it's not, it's not something the police chief can ever solve. In other words, we have job security. We will never solve the problems totally, but if we can reduce them, and if we can improve the quality of life, and what I mean by that, certainly if you're a full-time resident, typically folks my age and older are full-time residents, and then you have students as your neighbors, and students like to have house parties. A noisy house party on a regular basis becomes a quality of life issue. Vandalism, graffiti become quality of life issues. Red Solo cups, sort of the trademark of probably every American university, is a red Solo cup, becomes a quality of life issue. So that's where we need to begin to address. And if we can do that, we can make things safer, and we can make things better for full-time residents as well. Other ongoing efforts in our campus community would include, there's many of them, and I'm going to mention a few that spring to mind. The president of the university has a law enforcement meeting at least twice a year with local law enforcement chiefs, the state police barrack commander, the chief of Frostburg City, the sheriff, also student educational service representatives from not only Frostburg but from neighboring universities, Potomac State, Garrett College, Allegheny College, where we talk about issues. And because certainly sometimes when things happen here, they involve AC students. So we maintain those lines of communication. We have working relationships with each other. That's one example. There's an alcohol task force where we meet regularly to talk about things that we can do to reduce binge drinking. There's the community coalition that's funded through a grant, where folks involved in these issues and resolving these issues from many fields get together and talk about what we can collectively do. And also the dialogue series that is very beneficial in bringing people together to dialogue and to raise awareness around problems and discuss things and disagree about things, come to understand others, and out of that seems to be coming some very positive deliverables. And they may be small things like bobcat tracks on the street. I mean, who would think? But that brings people together. It makes the students feel as though they're part of the community, and it makes the community realize that they're part of the campus community as well. I actually like Frostburg a lot. I'm not a resident of the community. I live on the mountain in Garrett County, so I don't live here. But my experience here, particularly, I can speak to my experience at the university with the leadership that's there. It's just been amazing. I think that our current president, President Gibraltar, is just amazing in his field because he's addressing these issues. And my sense is that not all university presidents have the background or understanding to really understand that there are some things that as a president and with the leadership that he shows, you can really impact things where the rubber meets the road. I've been with the dialogue series since it began. It's been interesting. It's been very rewarding, and I think, I've seen different people come to different meetings. There are many of the same players involved with the dialogue, that are involved with the alcohol task force, that are involved with the community coalition. But what the dialogue series brings is more involvement with the community. And what I've seen recently with the dialogue series is members with the dialogue series are now bringing other members with them, so it's expanding and growing. So I think it's good work, and I think it needs to continue. thing that I learned is from being part of the dialogue series relates to the history in Frostburg. And that is that there was a community called Brownsville that was close to where the university is now. In fact, in the 50s, the university gobbled up Brownsville. It was an African-American community. The folks were essentially relieved of their property with very little remuneration, and I never knew that happened. So that was, and when I learned that, it gave me a historical context to some of the things that happened here, 60 some years later. So that was really sort of an aha moment for me. I'm not sure how that's going to be helpful to the goals of the project, but I'm not sure that it will be helpful. I think it will. I hope it will, because it's one of those things that, particularly we're in Appalachia and traditionally white, male-dominated culture here, and I'm hopeful that I'm not the only one that had that aha moment, and that folks can reflect on that. There's been discussion about how do we honor Brownsville, how do we honor that sacrifice, and if we can pull that off, I think that that's healing, not only for the relatives of the Spriggs and others, but for our African American student population, to realize that yes, it's Appalachia, yes, there are still some racial issues here, but we're working on it and we're trying to make it better. The dialogue series, I think, is going to continue to be necessary because there are natural tensions between a university community and a small town, elderly community that we need to continue to work on, and that we need to continue to engage the students with the full-time population here in Frostburg in a positive way, because there are many positive interactions. Young students can be very helpful to an elderly population, and the elderly population can learn a lot from the young folks. The young folks can certainly learn a lot from the elderly population. And we also need to continue to work on it because there are natural tensions just between young people and older folks, because young people sometimes they do really stupid stuff. And so we need to continue to discuss that, talk about that, and understand that.